It's very common that you want to represent an object as JSON. I'm happy to tell you that you don't have to do anything in particular to convert a record to a JSON representation. Let's try this on an instance of the order. We can use the JSON serializer from system.text.json to convert an instance of the order to a string that contains the JSON serialized object. Call the method serialize and pass an instance. To make it easier on the eyes when this is printed to the console, we can supply an option to write the JSON as indented text. We can see a very nice representation of the entire order as JSON. We have everything that we need to convert this back to an instance of an order. Without any additional changes, we can deserialize this text into an instance. This is done by calling the generic deserialize method on the JSON serializer. We specify the type that we assume this is going to be deserialized into, and if we run the application with the debugger attached, you can see that we got an instance of an order with all the data intact. So far, this works just fine. But what about if we'd like to specify that when this is serialized or deserialized, the JSON property, that is, the property name used in the JSON text, has a different name than what we use in our class? How do we define that? Normally, this is achieved by applying an attribute on the property. However, if we try to do that in the primary constructor on one of our properties, we are going to get a compiler error. This is because we're not in fact pointing to the property in this case. To explicitly define that this attribute is for the property that is generated for the total, we'd have to append a property : before using the attribute. We still apply this using the same approach as a normal attribute, but this lets you define that you intend to put this attribute on the property that is generated. If we compile this and look at the generated code, we can see that the attribute was applied to the property in the class. Another example of this is if we'd like to ignore one of the properties when serializing and deserializing. This is done with a JSON ignore attribute. Use the same approach as when adding any attributes, and then explicitly specify that this is for the property and that this will be ignored when this is serialized to JSON. Now that we rerun the application, the JSON property has a different name, and the property we ignored is removed from the JSON. Will this now work when it tries to deserialize this back to an instance of an order? Of course. We can see that this definitely worked. This has shown how to serialize and deserialize a record, but most importantly, how to apply attributes to the properties when defining your record.